Planes lose altitude all the time, but right away you could tell this was different.
Welcome once again, my fellow manipulators of digital fate. I'm Richie, this is Capricorn. Today's deck is my very first deck tech from Aether Drift Early Access. This one is called At This Velocity because we're trying to utilize speed, max speed, with the Start Your Engines mechanic using the only play line in the entire game that allows us to start at speed 2 as early as turn 1. Sometimes before our opponent ever plays anything at all, if we're on the play, which is kind of insane. But we're trying to push it that much further by also cross-pollinating those synergies with Affinity for artifacts, going super wide with a crazy amount of artifacts, a crazy amount of aggro, and then just slamming some ridiculous late-game value that just allows us to alpha strike for sheer insanity. The deck is pretty nuts. I can't wait to show it to you. Before we do, please like the video. It helps me get it out to so many more people and honestly helps the channel grow more than anything else. So please smash that like button. Do the thing. I appreciate you. Also, subscribe if you're new because I have a ton of crazy deck techs on the way. We are in the middle of early access. I am streaming for 24 hours straight. So if you're watching this video within the first 24 hours of it going live, head on over and join in on the shenanigans. You can tell me different card combinations you want to see in action, different deck ideas, and we can try them out on stream and see if it's worth it to craft those cards with your wild cards on launch day. So head on over. That's twitch.tv/quarantinecapricorn because if I'm alive and I'm breathing, I'm there and I'm streaming. This set's pretty nutty, and this deck is wild. Let's break it down. Alright, so this is my very first deck tech from early access for Aether Drift. We're using Azorius artifacts, but it's not your typical Azorius artifacts build. This one is centered around max speed and starting our engines, and we're using the only play line in the entire game that allows you to get to speed 2 as early as the very first turn. And if you're on the play, that happens before your opponent ever even gets to play a card, which is kind of insane. So we do that by dropping a Muraganda Raceway, which is a land that creates colorless mana. It has Start Your Engine, so it'll put us at speed 1, and at max speed it can tap for 2 colorless mana. If we drop that, use that to play a Ginger Brute, a 1 mana artifact creature with haste, we can immediately swing in with the Ginger Brute, do 1 point of damage, tick up to speed 2. Now technically you're only allowed to increase your speed by 1 each of your turns if your opponent loses any life at all during that turn. You're not allowed to tick up speed multiple times in the same turn, but starting your engines and putting yourself at speed 1 does not count as ticking up your speed. So the Ginger Brute swinging in will actually increase our speed to 2 on the very first turn, sometimes before our opponent ever even plays a land, which is kind of nutty. So the entire rest of the deck is built around taking advantage of going as wide as possible with an insane amount of artifacts, with things that have affinity for artifacts, and a couple other payoffs we'll get to, and also trying to use the most valuable max speed abilities in these colors. So the Muraganda Raceway being one of them, getting us an extra mana as early as turn 3 is kind of nuts, and we absolutely put it to full effect in this deck. But the other really good payoff for that is Mendicant Core Guidelight, a star power 3 toughness legendary artifact creature robot for 2 mana in the colors of Azorius. Its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control, so if you manage to be aggressive enough and force your opponent to use up their removal on your early threats, a lot of times this can stick the landing and have an insane amount of power that you can swing in with to help be aggressive. But also it starts your engines if you haven't been able to yet, and most importantly, at max speed, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1 to copy it. So now all of these crazy artifacts that we're jamming out, we're getting 2 of them for the price of 1 plus 1, and just going even crazier wide on the board. And our other crazy payoff at the top end is Salvation Engine. This is a 5 mana 6/10 vehicle that crews for 6, but other artifact creatures you control get +2/+2. Whenever this vehicle attacks, return up to 1 target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, This is pretty good as a vehicle, but it's insanely good as a double anthem for all of your artifact creatures, especially when you consider the fact that we have so many cards in this deck that come down super quick. We flood the board with artifact creatures, so we're able to get that much more value out of a double anthem effect like this. And if we have a Mendicant core online and we can pay an extra mana, we can actually copy it, get 2 of them into play at the same time, and buff our whole team by +4/+4, which is kind of insane, especially when you're considering we're cheating a lot of stuff into play a lot earlier, a lot cheaper than we probably should be because of affinity for artifacts and stuff like that. So our board is going to be way wider than most boards can be at that point in the game, just because of all the crazy artifact shenanigans, so we can get more value off of these double anthems. But it doesn't stop there. Crew 6 seems like a lot, but when you realize that every single artifact is getting buffed up by +2/+2, it's really kind of like Crew 2 in a way. You can tap any 2 1/1 creatures that are now buffed up by the +2/+2 to crew this. Or you can tap just, you know, 1 4-power creature that gets the buff from the Salvation Engine, or whatever the case may be. So it's actually a lot easier to crew this than it looks, and if we can swing in, we can get back our stuff. So if they did kill our Mendicant core early on in the game, which it probably will because it has a huge target on its back, we can just bring it back with the Salvation Engine, start to copy all of our stuff again. It can get pretty wild, but we can also bring back a lot of the other crazy stuff that we have in this deck. Now, the main thing we're using that for is the Anthem effect, don't get me wrong, but having this extra synergy built in is really nice, and it's pretty decent on the blocks too. Our other payoffs for going super wide with artifacts are the 2 best Affinity for Artifacts cards in this set. First of all, we have Memory Guardian. If we have at least 4 artifacts out, this comes down for just 1 blue mana, which is nuts. It's a 3/4 flyer, and then don't forget about the fact that it counts as an artifact creature itself. So it's going to contribute even more affinity for artifacts to the next card we're going to talk about, and it gets all the buffs that get picked up from Salvation Engine, and we can make copies of it for just 1 mana with the Mendicant core. So pretty crazy value for just 1 mana in the decks that can consistently drop it for just 1 mana, and this deck is entirely built around being able to do that, so this card is just nuts in this deck. We also have Voyage Home as the other payoff. Now this costs 5 colorless mana rather than the 4 for Memory Guardian, but that lines up super well with the Memory Guardian, because if you have your 4 artifacts out, you play the Guardian for just 1 at maximum cost reduction. That gives you your 5th artifact so that you can play the Voyage Home for just 2 with full cost reduction on that as well. Not only do you get to draw 3 cards, but you gain 3 life. Against aggro decks, this is hugely important because you're spending your early turns trying to build your board state and maybe losing life to make sure that you don't have to block and lose your artifact creatures so that you can get to affinity for artifacts. So being able to get some of that life back with Voyage Home just incidentally while you're also drawing your 3 cards is huge, and that's going to draw you into even more gas that can all come out super cheap and easily. You probably vomit everything you draw off of this onto the board immediately, and it gets super gross in conjunction with all of our other cards like the Mendicant core and the Salvation Engine. We're also running 4 Leyline Axe, because it's just a free artifact if it's in your opening hand, so we basically get to start at 1 artifact towards our affinity for artifacts buildup, and just have a head start there, which is awesome. But it's also a nice mana sink later on in the game when we have a bunch of mana, when our Muraganda Raceway turns on and we get the extra mana there, and some of the other mana dorks that we'll talk about in a moment. We can dump that extra mana into just equipping this Leyline Axe to our biggest creature and actually have a pretty crazy formidable threat with the double strike, trample, and the +1/+1. So Leyline Axe kind of plays double duty in this deck, reducing the cost of things that matter, going wider with artifacts for things that matter in that way, and also being a potential win condition later on that we can have as a mana sink. But starting at the bottom of the curve, we've got 4 Ginger Brutes. We've already talked about that being the one way we can get to speed 2 on our very first turn. We're also running 4 Nesting Bots. If we need to play a colored land on turn 1 and not one of the colorless lands that starts our engines, we can alternatively drop the Nesting Bot to start our engines. And when we do, we get this 1/1 artifact creature. If we hit max speed, it becomes a 2/1, which is a nice little bit of extra value because this deck can hit max speed so consistently. But really what's great about this is if we need to chump block something to stay alive an extra turn, we can with the Nesting Bot, and when it dies, we get another 1/1 artifact creature token to replace it, so we're not going down on permanents that contribute to our affinity for artifacts, or that get the buff from the Salvation Engine. We're able to stay neutral there while still blocking a key threat, or sometimes just swing in and they don't want to block and trade their guy because you get a guy back, so we can tick up our speed that way. There's just a lot of interesting ways to use the Nesting Bot, and it's really, really important in this deck, especially for those games where we don't have one of those lands that starts our engine for us. We want to make sure we can start our engines on turn 1. We're also running 4 copies of Yotian Frontliner and 2 copies of Spectrum Sentinel because they are both 1 generic mana, 1 colorless mana to play artifact creatures that count as soldiers. So a couple of important things about that. First of all, if we are playing with these colorless lands in our deck, we definitely want things we can use that mana for, so we have to resist the temptation to add some better 1 mana artifact creatures that cost colored mana, and, you know, avoid the possibility of running into a Muraganda Raceway sitting there, not being able to tap it for mana because everything we need to play costs colored mana. Especially when you take into account the fact that all of our affinity for artifact stuff, we're probably not actually paying any colorless mana for those, just the colored mana, so we really need as much colored mana as possible. So having some colorless things to play with that mana is important. Having more artifacts to go wide with for just 1 mana is important. And having more artifact creatures that can pick up those Salvation Engine buffs are also important. So these are the best creatures that we can play for the most part for just 1 colorless mana that count as artifact creatures. And the reason we need them to be soldiers is for another little bit of synergy that lines up where we want to play as many untapped lands as possible. We want to curve out with turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. We do not want to ever play a tapped land if we can help it in this deck, because it's incredibly important to just get that many more artifacts online so that we get our affinity down as quick as possible and can get those cards out as quickly as possible. So yes, we're playing the Adarkar Wastes, which can come into play and give us blue or white as an untapped land. And yes, we're playing Seachrome Coast because it has the same potential. But we're also playing Fortified Beachhead. The only other options for lands that would get us enough blue and white mana in the deck would have to come into play tapped. But the Fortified Beachhead at least has the opportunity to potentially come in untapped if we have a soldier in play or a soldier in our hand. So having these 1 mana artifact creatures also be soldier, having 6 potential soldiers, does increase our chances of having even more untapped mana, which in this deck is way, way more important than having a slightly better 1-drop artifact creature, in my opinion. So we're running the 4 copies of the Fortified Beachhead, and we're using it in that way. We've also got 1 copy of Amonkhet Raceway as a 5th Start Your Engines land, which, if we get one of these online, being able to give any one of our creatures haste at max speed is pretty nuts. So between the 1 Amonkhet Raceway, the 4 Muraganda Raceways, and the 4 Nesting Bots, we have 9 cards that can start our engines on turn 1, which I think is the perfect amount. But moving on to the 2-drop slot, we've got 4 Oaken Sirens and 4 Flywheel Racers. Both of them are artifacts. Both of them can generate mana. The Flywheel Racer can generate mana only when it's crewed, but that mana can be used for anything, including a Voyage Home, which is key. The Oaken Siren doesn't have to be crewed or anything to generate the mana, but the mana that it only makes blue, not any color, and it can only be used for artifacts, so we can't use that mana to play a Voyage Home. But both of these are really good in their own ways. The most important aspect is both of them swing in with Vigilance. So these are ways to attack on turn 3 with Vigilance, tick our speed up to potentially 4 on turn 3, while still having an untapped creature that can then tap for mana to play even more stuff. And sometimes that makes all the difference in the world. If we have an Oaken Siren that can still tap for mana, but we used it to get to speed 4 so that our Muraganda Raceway can tap for 2 mana, that means we can potentially have 5 mana on turn 3 to play the Salvation Engine, or God knows what other combination of craziness we can play with all of that mana as well. So having 8 2-drops that can each make mana, that can swing with Vigilance before making that mana to tick up our speed, and all count as artifacts, I think is really important for specifically this version of this deck. So we're running all 4 copies of both of those. The Oaken Siren in particular I really, really love because it swings in with flying and is able to make sure, even if they have a ground blocker, we just get in there for damage, we tick up our speed, and like I said, we still get to use this for mana. It still counts as an artifact for all of those synergies. Just really, really, really good. We've also got 3 copies of Halo Hopper. When I first built this deck, I had 4, but there are some situations where you just don't really have enough creatures out to take full advantage of the Halo Hopper and get it out for as cheaply as you'd like. That being said, the opportunity at the ceiling to just play this for basically 0 mana by tapping 3 creatures to get another artifact out to contribute that 1 more artifact to Affinity for Artifacts so that you can maybe play a spell a whole turn sooner than you otherwise might be able to, and just maybe play your Voyage Home, gas up on even more cards, draw into a land that you can drop to play more of those cards. Like, the amount of ridiculous snowballing you can do by just getting 1 more artifact out for no mana can sometimes really matter in significant ways. That being said, like I said before, if we don't get it at the right time, it can be a really, really bad feel if we aren't able to convoke this out appropriately. So I did come down from my original 4 copies to 3, and I think that's a pretty good number. But Halo Hopper, just awesome to convoke out and have a free 3/2 body that picks up all of our synergies and also reduces the cost of all of our affinity stuff. So that's the deck. It's honestly kind of insane. I love having Leyline Axe as a mana sink later in the game, and having some bomby plays in the form of Salvation Engine or Mendicant Core if we can draw into more gas for it with Voyage Home. Just a lot of insane gas in this deck. We didn't really have room for removal, so I think if I iterated on it in the future, and I probably will after the set launches on launch day, I would probably find some room for some removal in this deck to make it just like that much more solid. But I really just wanted to see how far we could push the insanity of, you know, max speed and affinity for artifacts in the same deck, with the ridiculousness of, you know, turn 1 Ginger Brute getting us to speed 2. And I think this deck is the best deck specifically to try to push that line. And yeah, I think the deck is awesome. The games were pretty nuts. I'm going to shut up now. Let's check them out. Alright, so this actually looks pretty decent. We can start with the Coast and the Nesting Bot and start our engines. We don't get to swing in like we could with the Ginger Brute, but that's okay. That's okay. Keep 7. Voyager Glide Car. Sure. We're going to go Coast, Nesting Bot, pass the turn. See if he's got a blocker for us. If it's something we can trade with, then cool. It won't be because he'll just block with the Glide Car. Well, maybe he'll attack with the Glide Car. I'm okay with that. He's greedy and wants to tick up his speed. I guess maybe we won't be able to tick up our speed. Yeah, that's a bummer. Maybe I should have blocked. You know what? I definitely should have blocked because we would have gotten the token. So even if we did still want to make sure we could attack and increase our speed, we could have done so with the token. It's okay, though. We are not running Maze Mind Tome in this deck. Too slow. Alright, takes up to 3 speed. But we do get to swing, which is really nice. I mean, I guess we just play everything, right? We don't get to use the mana, unfortunately. But we have pretty decent chump blockers if we need them. And we should be able to Voyage Home next turn. Being stuck with 2 Leyline Axes in our hand is pretty rough, I'm not gonna lie. Hey, welcome back, Treshian. Yes, we are back up and running, and we will not be stopping until tomorrow. So, welcome back. Alright, he's at 4 speed. The nesting bots get better. But are they good enough? We've got a ginger brute. We've got a ginger brute. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Crew here. Swing, swing. This makes sure we definitely get in to take up our speed, and the Flywheel Racer can't die so that we can Voyage Home second main phase. Keeps his nesting bot. Not bad. So now we Voyage Home, and we hopefully draw a land and something to cast with that land. There we go. Raceway, Frontliner. Let's go. Things are getting wild now. Things are getting wild now. Hopefully won't get old. Yeah, hopefully. We dipped our toe into goblins a little bit chunky. And that's really it. We had a lot of technical difficulties earlier. Case of the Gateway Express, sure. Just trying to ensure we don't get to 4 speed, I guess. Sure. I mean, I guess we trade with his nesting bots, right? I'd rather prevent 2 damage. And we still get artifacts for our affinity for artifacts when they die, so... we actually get more out of that exchange than him, I think. Alright. I guess we want to start with a Voyage Home since it's already got max cost reduction. And see if we can find anything else to play before combat. Another Muraganda Raceway. That's a lot of mana if we can turn them on. Swing, swing, swing. Make it so that if he doesn't block the Flywheel Racer with the Warden, he's gonna have a problem. I guess he just double blocks with the tokens. Yeah, I didn't see that coming. Oopsie. Why is it? Oh, right, because they only have 1 toughness. Alright, so we're up at 4 speed. But because our Flywheel Racer is dead, we don't get to make blue to play our Memory Guardian, which was the big thing I really wanted to try to do. Maybe I just shouldn't have attacked with the Flywheel Racer. Maybe I should have just used it for mana. I think that probably would have been better. No blocks. I'll take it. We have 6 mana. We need to play... See, the problem is we only have 2 colored mana. So we cannot play all of this stuff. And I think drawing is just too important, so we have to. One blue mana, 4 mana total. So we Memory Guardian. We equip this to the Memory Guardian. And then we Halo Hopper. And then we pass. And he scoops. That's it. That's what it is. This is a pretty good starting hand. We don't have the Ginger Brute, so we probably want to start with the Fortified Beachhead from the Sentinel. No, we still want to start our engines, don't we? Oh hey, we got the Ginger Brute. Let's start our engines and trade the Ginger Brute for the Scout. Cool beans. Mindspring Merfolk, sure. We'll go Fortified Beachhead, show the Sentinel. I don't think we have another play right now, unfortunately. So we'll just have to play the Sentinel. Very unfortunate assortment of cards. Bounce off, okay. Well, that doesn't matter too much. At the very least, we can play the Sentinel and use the Sentinel to convoke the Halo Hopper. And I think that's what we're doing. Alright. 3/2 Halo Hopper. Next turn we should be able to do some shenanigans. We need another white or blue mana. That's the big problem. Let's see. Needed to make the Deep Root Pilgrimage. Might have a Soul Cauldron to exile that Mindspring Merfolk later, which would be kind of interesting. So we'll do this. Do we want to try to increase our speed? Maybe. See if he wants to block it. Nope. Speed goes up to 2. That's pretty good. Pretty wide board, even with us being slowed down as much as we were earlier. Which is kind of nice. Alright. Well, now we can get Mendicant Core. Let's see. I guess we just swing with the team, huh? We'll give the +1/+1 to... I guess a Spectrum Sentinel. Alright, takes damage. We go up to speed 3. He's got blockers for our dudes. It is what it is. But at least we kill most of his stuff. Then we get to play a Mendicant Core. And if we can just tick up our speed one more time next turn, we can do some pretty wild stuff. We'd get the extra mana off the Raceway to play the Salvation Engine, which would be kind of bananas. Bounce off, sure. It is what it is. Swing, swing, make 1 token. Should have only swung with 1. You only get 1 token if everything attacks. Because it's whenever 1 or more. Do we just swing? I think yes. I could bring back the Yotian Frontliner. Pick up to speed 4. We're going to play this. Then we're going to tap you for colorless. Play you. Auto pay. Get 2 of them. We could give something haste if we wanted to, but we're not going to. Next turn we have the extra mana from the Raceway to play the Salvation Engine. Subterranean Schooner. I have to assume he's playing the Lifecraft Engine, but I don't think it's quite enough. I do not think it is quite enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're not going to have any extra mana to make copies of the Salvation Engine, which is the one thing that's really a bummer. And we also can't give it haste. But it's probably still worth just jamming, right? I don't know. Maybe we play it safe for now. Maybe we play it safe for now and just go wider. And wait on the Salvation Engine. Tidebinder. Oh no. Well, that's not good. Well, I guess we're gonna do haste. I mean, that's really not that big a deal, if I'm being completely honest. Like, we still probably win next turn with the Salvation Engine. Damage. We're just going to take it all. I mean, we could block the 2/2 with the Mendicant Core, but I'm not going to take a chance. Do. Yeah, you're toast. Didn't even get to choose another target. And right now, this is what I got. Alright. This actually looks keepable. So we will, in fact, keep it. We're going to start with the Beachhead and the Nesting Bot, I think. No matter what, we can't attack. So it doesn't really matter if we start our engines with the bot or with the land. Either way we get it started. I think it's just better to have the bot out. If we played the Raceway, we would have had to play the Frontliner. Alright, just gets a counter. That's fine. That is fine. We'll play this. I guess it just makes sense to play the Mendicant Core then, huh? We'll pick up our speed. We'll play the Mendicant Core. We'll pass. Does he have removal for our Mendicant Core? We will find out. I'm glad that speed is like a state-based thing. Muraganda Raceway. Do a little bit of that. Do we want to try to trade our Mendicant Core for his Knight Errant? I mean, it's not the worst ever. He either trades and we get to tick up our speed, or he eats our dude, we get an artifact to replace it, we tick up our speed, and we keep our Mendicant Core. All of that seems fine. Like, the Siren gets us to max speed next turn, turns on Mendicant Core, turns on Muraganda Raceway. We could top deck a land and play the Salvation Engine if we wanted. Actually, we wouldn't even need to top deck a land. We wouldn't even need to. Amonkhet Raceway. We go swing in the air. Trying to bluff him out. I don't know if it's gonna work. You know what? We should have swung with 2 just in case. Alright, we bluffed him out. Two Salvation Engines. Let's go. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Now we're doing what we're supposed to do. And we got card draw up the wazoo coming too. It's gonna get wild. What you got for me? You can get through with your flyer. Your other stuff, not so much. Case of the Gateway Express. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, that is enough to kill the Mendicant Core. Unfortunately. It's okay. We'll get you back next turn. Maybe. Maybe we'll get you back next turn. Yeah, looks like we're probably going to be dead. It looks like we're probably going to be dead. Well, I don't know. We might be able to prevent enough. We got some big boys. And if he attacks with everything, we've got lethal next turn. Come at me. Oh, right. Cancel. We have to crew 6. So, block here. Block here. Block here. Take 13. Adarkar Wastes. Why do birds suddenly appear every time you are near? We weren't done. We weren't done. Come on. So we get Leyline Axe in our opening hand. We've got the Muraganda Raceway, but we don't have the Ginger Brute. So we're gonna want to play Wastes on 1 and Nesting Bot to start our engines. We can keep this. This should be pretty interesting. So we're gonna start with Leyline Axe out, play the Wastes, play the Nesting Bot. We're at speed 1. Turn 2, we play the Raceway, we play the Flywheel Racer, and we get through for 1 point of damage to go to speed 2. Alright, we're at speed 2. Now we're going to probably play... Do we play the fly? No, we want a crew, right? We don't have a way to play Mendicant Core until after we swing. So, we're going to crew here. I mean, we could just attach the Leyline Axe. Which, you know, gets in for, what, 8 damage? I think I'd rather get Beef out onto the table, though. So let's swing. Tap you and you for the Flywheel Racer. And then let's play the Mendicant Core. And now shit's about to hit the fan. Basically. Resolve. Fair enough, Foozy. My turn. So, ooh, that's a lot of colorless. That's a lot of colorless. Let me think. See, the thing is, if we can get to max speed, we can generate extra mana from the raceways to equip the Leyline Axe. But I guess we just win, right? 12, 15. We might just win. It's possible we could win this turn, but we'd have to get really lucky. So I'm not going to do it. So we get to 4. We go Voyage Home. We draw no artifacts? Are you kidding me? Unbelievable. 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 I can't believe we drew none. That's wild to me. But we've got max speed forever, so we have a ton of mana now. We have 8 mana if you include our Flywheel Racers, the extra mana from the Raceways. Oh, I didn't realize that speed is under my webcam. Yeah, we're gonna have to fix that. Alright, gets rid of the thing. Double striker. Interesting. Haste. Crew here. That's a lot. And then we win. Yeah, there we go. Wild. Yeah, I don't think we can keep this. Unfortunately. Ugh, this hand's even worse. I guess we're keeping it. This game might be a bust. This game might be a bust. We'll find out. Alright, nesting bot. We'll tick up. Do you have a blocker, sir? You do. He's really not going to want to block, though. But he doesn't want me to tick up my speed, either. Oh, there we go. Flywheel Racer. So we already have enough on the field to drop the Memory Guardian if we want to. Spectrum Sentinel is basically free because of Memory Guardian. Flywheel Racer. Gas Guzzler. Taking up your speed. How nice. Alright. You're up to 2. That is perfectly fine. I think we wait on the Mendicant core. I mean, I guess if we play it this turn, next turn we attack, we can get all the copies. See, if we play all this stuff out and have nothing to get copies with the Mendicant core, then that's a problem. Right? Cruise for 1. I mean, I guess we keep the I guess we just keep the Memory Guardian in our hand for next turn and play the Mendicant Core out this turn. To be honest, we could save them both for next turn if we wanted to. We could. Blood Witch. Pass. My turn. A lot of options here. I guess we probably crew. I mean, he's not gonna be happy, right? No matter what. We'd have to double block. I guess we want to make sure that the core I don't think we want to copy the Guardian. I think we need to Voyage Home, which we're now not going to be able to do because he's going to kill our Flywheel Racer. Yeah, I did not. I made some bad decisions. We should have just waited and copied the Memory Guardian and waited until next turn to Voyage Home, because there was no way our Flywheel Racer was going to make it through anyway. But I mean, we're at 4 speed now, and we have a Mendicant Core, so I mean, with a little bit of luck, we might actually be able to do some crazy stuff. That 3. Muraganda Raceway. Well, that gives us our 4. Which is nice. We get more land and more Voyage Homes. That's not what we wanted. That is not what we wanted. I guess we just send the Memory Guardian in over their head. We could save it as a blocker, but I think just having one good blocker is enough to keep him from attacking with anything super relevant. And our nesting bot replaces itself with another artifact when it dies, which is pretty huge. Hey Bandit, you're snoring. Thank you. He wants to sack the nesting bot to the Bartolome. I think this is a raise the pass deck. Yeah, it is. Alright. Start your engines online. He can start sacking things to draw cards, which is pretty rad. We do not have a soldier for the Fortified Beachhead, which is kind of a bummer. If we draw a 1-mana artifact, though, we can play it and reduce the cost of Voyage Home by 1 so that we can still play the Voyage Home. And then maybe we draw an untapped land. And then we get to play something else. In fact, we play a 1-drop artifact and we copy it with Mendicant Core. And we still get to play the Voyage Home for 2. That would be the end-all, be-all. Of course, it would have to be a colorless. It'd have to be one of our colorless 1-mana artifact creatures. But there's still potential. Bloodcast, sure. What a card. It's gonna be fun using Bloodcast to crew things. Hey Bandit, you're snoring again. That dog loves his snoring. We get an untapped land. I guess we just play the Voyage Home, right? We don't need to play the untapped land unless we can use it to play something. And we can't. So, instead we'll play the Seachrome Coast, the thing that has to come in tapped. I think at this point, I don't know, man. It might be more important to just hold back a blocker, but we're going to try and swing in. We got some shenanigans next turn. We can give something haste if we want, if we draw into it. We just need more artifacts on the field. We're drawing into all of these lands. 3 Voyage Homes. And how many artifacts have we seen all game? 4? 4? Thank you for the follow, Mr. Planks. Appreciate you. And also you, Dacine. Thank you for the follow. Alright, so he raises the past, gets everything back, yada yada yada. Is it enough to kill us on the spot? Doesn't look like it. Because he knew he'd be able to bring it back along with all the other Bloodghasts. Pretty crazy. Alright, we've got Frontliner on 1, and then we have to draw into a land to do anything else, and we're on the play, so we can't keep this. This looks okay. We've got the Leyline Axe. We keep 6. We probably toss back... Do we toss back a Siren? Or do we toss back a land? I think we toss back a land. Start with the Leyline Axe. We will start our engines. Yeah, I've tried before, Panthro. Nothing ever comes of it, unfortunately. We're gonna go Oaken Siren, pass the turn. We'll get to swing in every turn and tick up our speed with the Siren, which is really, really nice. Sky Serpent Seeker. Maybe I lied. Maybe we won't be able to do that. Maybe we just play things out. Instead. It's a bummer, because we have the Mendicant core. I think next turn we swing no matter what. But I think having a turn where we get to use that mana is probably important. Lush Oasis. How lush is the Oasis? Alright. We are going to... It's worth noting too, I could have used the Oaken Siren to equip the Leyline Axe to the Serpent. I guess I probably should have. I didn't see that coming. I forgot all about the ability putting a counter on it. But we did get to up our speed, which is not nothing. Hello. That's pretty wild. What you got? Can you kill our Mendicant core? You can't. Whoa. Blocks the Halo Hopper. Goes to 1. Okay. Okay. Fine. Spelunking. Pretty wild. Yeah, unfortunately, Panthro, that's not really a thing. We got it. Thanks so much for checking out my channel. I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons over at Patreon. Without you guys, this channel would not be possible, so honestly, thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your contributions. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe. The more likes we get and the quicker we get them, the bigger this channel will grow and the faster it will grow. I'd love nothing more than this channel to become something very special for you guys, but it's entirely up to you how fast that happens. Also, if you'd like more deck techs, that's somewhere over there. And if you'd like to see what else the channel's been up to lately, that's somewhere up that way. Also, subscribe, circle below, do all the things.